how to become specializing in shoulder pain and stuff like that. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and I saw some people not getting better even after surgery, and decided to kind of look, all right, supposedly they're fixed, so what else is going on after they got fixed that isn't allowing them to get all their motion back or what have you. Started doing some extra continuing education as well to look at that, something called an SFMA, where you kind of look at people from head to toe and looking at different things like motor control issues. What that is like subconscious brain letting you move. Think about walking. When you walk or go up and down stairs, you don't think about it, you just do it. Well, that's because your brain kind of on autopilot does that for you, and when that autopilot is out of whack, that's kind of what a motor control issue is. So let's start with some anatomical stuff. What is the rotator cuff? All right. It's a group of four muscles that come off the shoulder blade. This is the right shoulder blade looking at the front of the person and attached to the head of the humerus. Okay? So, this is the back of the shoulder here. You got one that takes up that entire back side of the shoulder blade and goes to here. You got a skinny little one that shoots like my finger from here to there. Then on the underside, you got one that takes the whole front of the shoulder blade and goes to here. And then on the top, kind of right, starting back there in that corner of your shoulder blade, threading under this bone here and attaching right there. So if we look at this right here, you can see that little muscle and its tendon threading through. Okay? Alright. So their job is to help move your arm. So when you have rotary motion, this is a rotary angle as opposed to just shrugging or what have you, you need a force couple. So forces are directional and there's an amount of force. Okay, so the deltoid, big muscle here, the shoulder muscle you guys may think of, this guy, its force on the humerus is actually straight up. So you got that bone right there above the ball and socket joint, and if you had no rotator cuff, you just get this. That's called impingement. It would pinch on that tendon I was just mentioning that threads under the bone there. Okay? Then you got the four rotator cuff muscles that come off the shoulder blade here and pull down and in. So you got deltoid, rotator cuff. Those are the directions of the forces. And if the ratio's off, you get this instead of this. So when you have an impingement type problem, you'll have pain kind of here, going down there, sometimes as far as the elbow. Hopefully it doesn't get that bad before you see somebody, because if it is, it's been going on a while, and you've just gotten weaker and weaker. Alright, so let's just talk about all the areas that work together now. So we went over how the shoulder blade is basically creating the socket for the humerus, okay, which is your arm bone, okay? Then you have your thoracic spine. So your thoracic spine, if we look at the spine here, you have 7 neck vertebrae, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that stops right where that bump is. C7 is that bump right at the base of your neck, okay? Then T1 is right here. So your first rib, actually under my skin obviously, but sits right there. So it starts up kind of high in the back and dives down at an angle below your collarbone and attaches right here. Okay, so when we think of our ribs, I get this from a lot of clients, they think they're just here. No, they go all the way up to the base of your neck. So you have 12 vertebrae from about here to here that all have the ribs attached to them. Okay? And this is a side note, I just saw a guy yesterday who unfortunately got run over by a car, and they put these like little plates with a bunch of screws in, so he's got like basically steel ribs now. Now they're attached to the bones, but I'm like, wow, it's unfortunate, but it's one of the coolest x-rays I've ever seen, you know? So again, you got the shoulder blade, you got the ball and socket joint, okay? You got the thoracic spine, and then you also have the neck. And they're tied in all together. So let's say you have a shoulder problem, you have a neck problem, and you have an upper back problem, okay? I would say 80% of the exercises you guys are doing are going to be the same thing because everything moves together, all right? So I'm going to demonstrate something here to you. You can put your fingers like a knife into my spine right here. You got to push pretty hard. Okay. Feel how much those bones are moving? Okay, keep pushing hard. You feel how much they have to move? All right. Do you want to feel or do you believe in it? Do you want to feel?
That's my neck.
Push really.
I got fingernails, so that's good. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Would you like to feel something?
No, that's all right.
All right, so all of that stuff acts together. So you may have a neck problem, and then you'll be doing the same exercise that somebody who had rotator cuff surgery is doing. You might be thinking, why am I doing these shoulder exercises for my neck? What's that supposed to do? All right, so part of our job as therapists is to teach you why we're doing stuff, so it makes sense. So it makes you kind of help figure out for yourself, oh, when this hurts, I need to do that. When this is stiff, I need to do something else. And so on and so forth, and that's what we really like to do, kind of teach you how to almost think like a physical therapist, but it's really not that hard. It's just about, oh, I never heard that before, it's new, okay? All right, so, at the end of the workshop, if anybody has any questions, wants me to check anything out, I'm more than happy to do it. I'll probably put one or more of you up in the middle of it, and go from there. All right, so next thing, is your pain reproducible? All right, does it hurt when I reach overhead, okay, or back behind me? Or does it only hurt when I'm lifting something, okay? Reaching behind your back, getting dressed, because again, that's this. A lot of times we take our shirts off like that, and then we change when we do it, or how we do it, when we have that impingement that I was talking about, because this is the position of impingement, this chicken wing thing. And a lot of us, when we have that problem, we're like, oh, yeah, we just keep impinging on it more, trying to work it out, okay? So then maybe you change to taking your shirt off through the arm because you're not putting your arm in that position, okay? Does it hurt when you sleep, okay? I will tell you this, if you got a rib cage issue up here, or if you have a shoulder issue, sleeping on your side, whether it's the bad side or not, is going to make it worse, almost guaranteed. And it's really easy for me to say that and say, oh, just don't sleep on your side. But have you guys ever tried to change your sleeping position and been successful in like a day or two? No, it takes a long, long time. Okay, so just want to go through that and make you feel not bad. If you're like, I try not to sleep on my side, you're not alone. Okay, so basically, what I'm getting at with all that is if the pain is reproducible, yeah, I can make it hurt. It is reducible, which means, hey, I can go learn some exercises or stretches or different types of things, and all of a sudden make it feel significantly better. All right, let's talk about common causes of pain. The first most common cause of pain is immobility here in people that are over 40, in my experience. Okay. When I got to be about 40, I started stiffening up in here, and I noticed it because I went to one of these courses, and I'm like, well, I can't, my arms, I've never hurt my shoulder, I don't have anything. Well, I got stiff here because I wasn't doing a lot of overhead activities. If I'm a carpenter, electrician, pipe fitter, I'm never going to have that problem. I'm constantly working overhead, okay, or somebody who trims palm trees, they're doing all that stuff. They're not going to have that problem unless, you know, they hurt their shoulder and they stop moving or what have you. Who has that problem? What a lot of us do, or have done if we're not retired, sitting at a computer all day, hours on end. I cannot tell you how many oil and gas employees work 15, 16-hour days like this. Oh, I'm on a project. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you if you can't stop being in that position for hours and hours on end. Now, there is a company, Chevron, who has something that shuts their computer off called Office Athlete. So, I don't remember the ratio, but let's say it's 30 seconds every 5 minutes. It turns their computer off, and it says, hey, try this exercise, try that exercise. It's not physical therapy, but at least it gets you moving and gets you out of this constant position that many of us could be in for 3 hours, okay? So that's a really, really good thing, and I learned that years ago. I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And then they developed this, what I call an ergo-Nazi culture, where if your ergonomics aren't right, your coworker is supposed to walk by your cubicle and say, hey, Tony, you're sitting wrong, or something like that. And from what the employees have told me, it has worked very well for them, okay? Second most common cause of shoulder pain is impingement, okay? And that's when the rotator cuff could get weak, or you have an injury, okay? And again, looking at this where everything's threaded through, is this taped?
Yeah, it's taped.
Okay.
It's taped.
So I'm just going to pull this off so you guys can see a little closer. All right, so this is the humeral head, this is the socket, this red thing attached to the white thing is the tendon, and then that blue thing is a bursa sac. Okay, a bursa sac is a fluid-filled sac that just sits there, and its job is to take the brunt of all the pinching so the tendon doesn't get a tear, okay? You do that enough, or you have some sort of traumatic injury, you fall on your shoulder or whatever, you get bursitis, that guy blows up, then all of a sudden he's bigger. So there's less space, so you're pinching on him more and more and more. So there's a few different ways you can impinge in the shoulder, and again, you're typically going to feel it down the outside here, okay? Now, many times, a cortisone injection from your family doctor or your orthopedic doctor is going to give you significant relief. In that first 2 weeks, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. But here's what everybody's going to do. They're going to constantly irritate it, testing it. Yes, sir, doing that, doing that. I'm like, oh, stop doing that. But you know, it's human nature, and I have seen so many people do it. So if you've ever caught yourself doing that, again, you're not alone. Many, many people do it. Okay. How do you fix that? A lot of times it's going to be strengthening exercises of the rotator cuff. All right, so you got the ball, you got the socket, you got that guy, that bone up here called the acromion, okay? There's less space here now. So what do? You do strengthening stuff that helps pull the head of the humerus down. Anybody remember which muscles pull the head of the humerus down and in? The rotator cuff, guys, that come off the shoulder blade and pull down and in. Remember we talked about that force couple, the big deltoid straight up, the 4 rotator cuff muscles that come off the shoulder blade, pull down and in. So if you guys have ever had therapy before and you've done the TheraBand exercises, okay, the resistance band, that's what you're addressing. You're trying to increase the strength of the rotator cuff to depress the humeral head more when you raise it up, so you don't have that pinching. Okay. The third most common cause of shoulder pain is poor posture, whether it be sleeping, sitting, or standing. Anybody taller than they were when they were 20 years old? Anybody? Anybody grow in the last number of years? No. All right. So as age progresses, something happens. Your body muscles are working against gravity. And again, we talked about the desk person. Okay. This is more typical I see in women, but I see men with it too. You know, they get that hump. Okay. And they get that immobility. We talked about me personally at 40. I mean, I don't look like I have that hump right now, but you know, we get stiff in this because we're not doing that. Okay. Just some other professions, you know, dentists or oral hygienists. Okay. Teachers, you know, if they're writing on the overhead or on the computer and stuff like that, depending on what type of teacher they are. Your phys ed teacher, probably not going to have that problem, okay? But an English teacher or a math teacher, anybody that's sitting for hours on end grading papers, probably an English teacher more than anybody else, or because they're reading, you know, 2-page, 3-page reports as opposed to a math guy going, all right, the answer's 12, 15, check, 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 okay? If you get into the heavier math stuff like calculus, you know, where the word counts, then yes, they'll be there longer. So again, if you start getting more slouched here, well, now you're looking down, okay? so I started doing it. So now you're looking down, and then you gotta, now my head's forward. Now let me stand up straight and show you what I look like. Does that look like it would be a comfortable posture for your neck for hours on end or years on end? No. Okay. So that's what happens. We start developing all these structural changes because life gets in the way. Okay. In the 1800s, 1700s, number one, most people didn't live long enough to get that stiff. Okay. The average age, length of living was under 30 back in the day in the USA. So you didn't have enough time to do that. And they're out there hunting, fishing, doing all this stuff, climbing, chopping trees, okay? Very rarely did they stiff it up because they were doing so much manual labor, okay? Another common cause of shoulder pain is a muscle tear, okay? A lot of times it's gonna be those rotator cuff muscles, the four muscles, they come off your shoulder blade and attach to the head of the humerus, which is the ball on the ball and socket. Okay. It typically heals wonderful in 6 to 8 weeks if it's like less than a 75% tear. Okay. There are so many people out there with rotator cuff tears that don't hurt at all. Okay. Most of us over 40 have some partial tear in our rotator cuff, and we don't even know it, even if we're asymptomatic. Okay. When you have that partial tear, it hurts a lot more initially, okay? But you have less limitations. So the person with a full terrible tear, they're like, okay? The person with the partial tear is like, ow, ow, okay? They can go all the way up, but it just hurts a lot, okay? So think of it like this. Let's say you had one of those big ropes, okay? But that rope was innervated and you can feel it, okay? So every time you pull on those stressed out, partially torn tissues, you feel all that, right? Now let's say it's completely cut. You can pull them all apart. There's no stress on anything, it's moving, but you're not gonna feel the pain. So with a full rotator cuff tear, you're not gonna have nearly as much pain as a partial tear because there's still fibers there, you're still stressing out on the ones that are trying to heal and what have you. So that's why you have a lot of pain, more function, okay, versus no function and not a lot of pain. Yeah, I just can't move it. I don't know what's wrong here. This is weird. Okay, so a little true or false question here. The findings on my X-ray, imaging, ultrasound, MRI explain why I have shoulder pain. Correct. The answer is no. A picture is just a picture. Okay? It tells you what you look like at that second. Okay? I'll go into something else. So I have had, luckily, only about 4 people that had this issue. All right, so let's talk about that anatomy again. You got the ball, you got the socket. Okay? Now picture like a rubber seal all around the socket. You have something like that, and on this drawing, you only see it on the side here, but basically you have like a rubber seal around that socket, and the ball kind of fits into there. That's called your labrum. Now it's not rubber, obviously, we don't have rubber in our body. It's made of cartilage, okay? But that labrum deepens the socket so you don't dislocate as much. So imagine you had a socket this big, and now it's that big. A lot less chance of it popping out when you fall on your shoulder, or get hit in the arm, or get in a car accident, or whatever. Okay. So that image is well on an MRI, but let's say it's ripped off the bone, but it's laying exactly where it should lay because you're not doing a bunch of crazy stuff to hurt it. So I've seen several people who had that. They're like, oh, the MRI says I'm fine. I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not helping you.
Okay? So then what they'll do is they'll do an MRI with contrast. Okay? They put the nuclear medicine in there that glows, and when it glows and they take the MRI, they're like, oh, look, it leaked through behind where it was laying down perfectly. Okay? So there's a lot of different imaging things. They're the best thing we have out there. I'm not ragging on imaging. Okay? What I'm telling you is don't focus on that too much, because if you're like, oh, it doesn't say anything's wrong, so I must be crazy. No, you're not, okay? And also, don't focus on it like, oh, well, 50% of my muscle's torn in my rotator cuff. Well, there's a lot of people with that don't hurt, okay? So let's see what you can do with some exercises or what have you, doing everything pain-free. That's another key with an injury like this. If you're doing your exercises to the point of pain, and I will say this, I'm stereotyping, but after 25 years, I think I'm right. You get anybody over 65 right now, and you tell them do their exercises without pain, they're like, oh, whatever, Sean's a dummy. I'm just going to do it, no pain, no gain. Then they come back worse and worse and worse, and I'm confused because they're telling me, oh, no, it doesn't hurt when I do it. Then I kind of look at their face and watch them do all the exercise. They're like, yeah, doesn't hurt when you do, oh, it's not pain, it's just a little achy. Use some other adjective that means it hurts, okay? So you got to be smart with this stuff, and you can't act like you did when you were 25 and expect the same types of things to happen, okay? Now, maybe when you were 25, if you worked through some exercises and they hurt, hey, that was fine. But now your tissues are different. You're probably not in the same great shape you were then, either working out or working a job that kept you in really good shape, okay? So you gotta adjust with the times. You can still do everything you want to do so long as you were doing it right before that newest injury took place, but it just may take a little bit of time, and you got to be a little bit patient.